Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past shows are archived and available as podcasts. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. Want to send a question or comment, you can always do that to DJ at ArtistFirst.com. Now here they are, the Way Cool Duo. It's Michael and Margaret Lyons.
The Way Cool Duo. The WCD. It's even cooler. Yes, I am Michael Lyons.
And I am Margaret.
And that's the end of our show.
Done.
The Way Cool Duo is out of here. And tonight's show is about your face. It's about the face, right, in some ways. And, you know, they say the most fascinating thing, the thing that attracts the attention, let's say, of infants, you know, basically just newborn infants, the most fascinating thing is the human face. If you want to attract attention to anything, and you'll see this in all kinds of advertising and all kinds of we humans are hardwired to see faces, right, and to focus on the face, focus on the eyes, to read emotion, and to express, pick up subtle nonverbal clues from what we see on the face.
Right. And whenever we're looking at anything, any pattern, anytime even a cloud or like the man in the moon pattern.
Yeah. Or tree, or, all over the interwebs, which is the place to go when you want to see anything.
Oh, dear.
No, there are all over the interwebs. There are sites that'll find, a mailbox with a couple of dots on it. It looks like a face, or this. So we anthropomorphize, which is a long word to say that we make things more human-looking by putting a face on them. If you draw a smiley face on something, it attracts attention. Why is the beetle, the famous bug, the car, so cute? Because it looks like it has a smiling face on it. So faces are one of the most important things to human beings. The faces that, when you see a cute picture of a baby or a cute picture of a puppy or any kind of animal, it's always the eyes that attract the most attention, the face that attracts the most attention. So you can literally say that what makes us human is the face, or what makes us identify with something, and find it attractive and find it compelling and find it interesting, is to the extent that it looks sort of human, looks like it has a face. It's not that everything that is attractive and interesting has to have a face, but anything that does have a face attracts our attention.
Right. The eyes are automatically looking for some kind of face or face pattern. The eyes especially, as you said, the reason why babies or little animals, they're so appealing is the big eyes in relationship to the face. And you should think about that for a moment. What do those big eyes mean in your own psyche or your own being? What are you interpreting that as? And in the media, it's just, cute. But it's also non-threatening. Right.
You can also, you immediately pick that, as you mentioned, you pick those patterns out of a chaotic background. If you're trying to, when you look out over a sea of people, it's difficult to find one particular face. And when you're trying to talk to a group, what they always say is find one face in the crowd, focus on that, find a friendly face, they say, and if there's no friendly faces, find a face anyway. And focus on that, and then talk to that one person. And then if you're really kind of good at this, you kind of find one person and kind of talk to them for a while, and you find another person. So you appear to be talking to everybody in the room. Everyone is, when the other thing about your face is when you expose yourself, when you put yourself out there, people get self-conscious about their face, about how they look, because this is also, we feel not only that we connect with people by their face, but we also feel that our face is being judged. Why is there a $17 bazillion makeup, industry? Because people want to make their face look as attractive or as compelling or just as beautiful as they possibly can. Why do people spend so much money on cosmetic surgery or on changing how their face looks? Is because the very first impression you get of somebody, and almost, I believe they say, within a few seconds you decide whether you like them or you don't like them, is their face. And it's an unfair thing. It's an unfair thing, but it's really hardwired. It's really deep in the in sort of the pre-verbal who we are. That an attractive face will attract, and a face which is asymmetrical or in some way doesn't have the features that we're looking for. And there are certain relationships which are also interesting. If you go into the science of it a little bit,
right.
There are relationships which make a face more beautiful or less beautiful.
Right. Now, I was just going to say that studies that they had done to try to pinpoint what the ideal beautiful face would be and what proportions. And it was interesting because it was across the board. It didn't matter what culture you were in, because most people think, certain culture, this is beautiful, or that's beautiful. It's like, no. That comes down to a real basic core level of these particular proportions of cheekbones, where they are placed, the eyes, and the shape of the eye, and where they are placed, and percentage of what percentage of the eye is actually taking up the face. It was fascinating. That's what we consider beautiful. But what is also interesting is beauty isn't always the attractor to the face. There is at a sublime level that these are what we consider beautiful. And how many times have we met people that their outside appears beautiful, but the minute they open their mouth, you just take a half a step back, because it's like, whoa, okay.
And run screaming out of the room. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of geometry. So again, why do we have this $17 bazillion industry? Is because the very first impression you get of somebody is before they speak, their face, what their face says to you. Then, the more you get to know people, it's not that their faces no longer matter, but the relationship isn't at the face level. The face is the it's sort of the packaging. It's not really the packaging, but it is the very first, very quick impression of somebody.
It's the first contact.
Yes, it's the first contact. One of the other interesting studies, and this goes back to liking versus disliking. And this was this comes in the realm of politics, but it's also germane to many other things. There was a study done which would predict in elections where they already knew the outcome. They would show to a group of people who had no idea what the outcome was, which person, it had to decide in 3 seconds which person was going to win of these two. And it was a pretty decent predictor of who actually won. And it came down to some of those geometries that you were talking about. The regularness of the features and the way they fit into this kind of, and it's wired into our brains because none of us know what the shape is supposed to be, but some of it has to do with that golden ratio, the 4:3 ratio that you find in nature. Our brains are wired to find that pleasing. Now, why? If you go back through hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary of the development of humans, is what we're going to find is that those features were a good predictor of genetic health, or of just health in general, or a good predictor of whether this was a mate who you could reproduce with. So they get reinforced, and like most traits, there's sort of a feedback loop. So because this looks good and it works, it also looks good again and it works, and you work yourself into this kind of these are the traits I'm looking for in a face which I think I could have a relationship with. Now, your point, then they open your mouth and you run screaming out of the room. But, those, again, go to the internet for all these horrible things. These hot or not websites, which are basically flashing up a picture of somebody on a screen for 3 seconds and you have to say yes or no, like or no, don't like, are massively steer towards these same geometric proportions. So at the end of the day, part of us is programmed from probably before birth to recognize faces and to favor a certain proportion of the features of a face versus another. And then the uncanny valley thing.
Yeah. When people sort of, they look human, and then there's something a little bit off, and you're like, is that person actually a human? And you get this weird feeling. I don't know if there is a word in English with that feeling of this is not right.
Right, something in the back of your head. It's an atavistic kind of you draw back at a. This is a diseased thing. This is something that might.
It's wrong.
This is sort of a fake human,
Yeah.
And, part of the way horror films frighten you is by exploiting this uncanny valley. Now, what it is why it's called an uncanny valley. Just in brief, if you look at things that have faces, you're attracted to them for a good period of time. So if you take something and you put a face on it, it's attractive. And, you have these little, robot things, and you have cute little dolls, and everything's fine. And then you get just to this point where it's getting to look too human, but not human enough. It looks sort of like a dead person or a person who's deformed. And all of a sudden, there's this huge drop-off, they call it the uncanny valley, where you kind of feel frightened and repulsed by this thing which looks too human but doesn't look quite right. Game designers, video game designers, ran into this as they made their video game characters more and more human-like. All of a sudden, people hated them. Like, ooh, this is too creepy.
Right.
And then if you get to the other side of it and you make it look completely human, and then people just accept it. They say, oh, yeah, that's just a person within the normal variation. So there's this weird kind of reaction within us, again, hardwired, where we say, this is a face, and it's a human, and I can deal. And this is a thing that looks like it has a face, and it's okay. And then there's this thing in the middle, which is like, run away screaming.
Yeah. There's that runaway moment.
Runaway moment. Because it looks like somebody who might be either, you can see that this person could be a phony human or perhaps a dead human or something that just is too close.
It's like there's a point in you that says danger. There's something really, really wrong with that. It's no longer a person.
Right.
It looked like it was a human being, but suddenly there's something in you that says not human.
Right.
It's bad.
It strikes this chord that makes you repulsed. So advertisers have found... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it'd be interesting to find out why that happens. What is it what is the reactions what is it triggering? It's like babies, when they see an image of a snake, they pull away immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It's something like that. So what is it? What was going on in our DNA?
there have been some pretty in-depth studies, but in general, some of them have theorized and have found supporting evidence for that this close to human but not quite right. It evokes this kind of idea of a diseased, a deformed, or a dead person, and you want to draw back from this because there's danger here. There's possibly contagion. There's possibly so these are
that was what
that's part of the
was?
That's part of the uncanny valley, is that it's so close yet off enough that you think that this person has something wrong with them. You know, they're in some way going to either contaminate or there's something diseased about them. It evokes this idea of the revulsion that people have if they see somebody who's diseased or dead. You pull back, and it evokes fear. But I mean, so this is I don't want to get too deeply in this because it's a whole other topic of its own. This is the universe of the face attraction, and then if more to our topic, when something is impersonal, we call it, language always informs, we call it faceless. It's a monolith. It's impersonal. It doesn't have a face.
Right.
When you want to attract people and give them something friendly, you always put a human face in front. You customer service, you put a real human in there. You don't put when you put a robot. Right. When you put this robot in front, people get annoyed. And similarly, if you make the human interaction too impersonal, the more impersonal you make it, the more licensed people feel to treat that thing like a thing and not like a person. So when you have a personal interaction, there's two things that happen. It makes you feel better, but it also makes you not, it doesn't give you the license to treat that thing as a thing or an object. It makes you treat that person as a person. So when something's faceless and impersonal, people get unreasonably angry if it frustrates them, or unreasonably they feel no restriction on
abusing it?
On abusing, exactly, thank you, on heaping abuse on something which is impersonal. If something impersonal makes you angry, the reaction can be beyond rage. This kind of fury that doesn't care, just out to destroy.
And did they do studies on that one?
Yeah, well, again, this has to do with when you impersonalize things to the point where people no longer feel that this is a living, breathing, understanding human being that they're interacting with. The reaction to frustration or to anything which causes them grief is unreasonable anger. They feel no restriction in cursing, swearing, reacting extremely badly, treating someone on the other side extremely badly. Similarly to if you impersonalize, if you dehumanize
right,
someone to the point where they no longer appear to be a real person, you take away their face, you take away their identity, it kind of gives people the license to treat them like an object. And I think, and this is part of our premise, I think there's a great danger in dehumanizing or in disconnecting the face from the person. And what does that in our society today, far beyond any other force, is sort of the internet, the interwebs. You have these things called avatars, which are basically a simulacra of you, and it can be everything from a cute little puppy to something which, you know, we've seen the kids will build these things. What do they call them? Me's or something? I forget what they're called. That you can actually literally drag over, you know, this hair and these eyes and these glasses and make something which sort of looks like you, but it's still not, of course, you. And this is your
representation.
Right. It's sort of your internet face. But no matter what, you're still not interacting with someone person to person. You know, if you have to go into a store and you have a grievance and a nice clerk listens to you and tries to help you, and at the end of the day they couldn't help you and nothing could happen, but you still say, well, thank you so much for trying, and I understand, and isn't it horrible, and you commiserate, and you have a human interaction, you know.
Right.
You treat each other like people. But if that same interaction happens on a chat over on a website, you know, it has to be. There's a great danger of it suddenly turning into this very vitriolic, you know, interaction. People feel the license to just say anything, do anything, because they're sort of
there's no filter on their words. In their head, they think the filters have been removed because you're not real as a human anymore.
Right. You're no longer a real human. You don't have feelings. You're just an object, which I am now angry at.
Right, and I'm going to spew.
I'm going to spew. And there's the other side of it is that you feel that there's no danger or no downside because you're not exposing your own face. You know, again, when we were talking about being going up in front of a crowd and presenting, you know that you're being seen, that you want to look nice and you want to sound nice and you want to have a nice face to put on it, and you're trying to find a face in the crowd that you can talk to. Well, if you impersonalize this, there's a disconnection. And when you have, let's say somebody's trying to put some presentation on the screen, and what you'll find is, to the extent that it's impersonal, people will pay no attention, or they'll act rudely. They'll get up, walk out. They'll, maybe make rude comments if they really don't like what's going on, and they don't feel any restriction on that, because as far as they're concerned, there's nobody here to react to these ill behaviors on their part. It's just a screen. So the disassociation of a person with the interaction, you know, both my disassociation as a person in the room and the disassociation of the person I'm interacting with, you know, takes away the civility, the humanity of the conversation.
It's not a conversation anymore.
True.
You know, there's no. It's just a moment where someone's triggered and they're in a reaction. So, but you have to. It's again being aware of what is actually happening to you in that moment, because especially when you get triggered, it's like, well, why are you angry? Why are you doing this? Why do you have that reaction? And to be able to to stop yourself in a reaction is almost impossible. So the only time you can actually analyze it or take it apart to find out what it is that got you into that mode is usually afterward, and then you have to make the decision to really look at something to say, okay, I don't want to have this button in me anymore. What is this? Why am I having this reaction? How did that start? And if it's the fact that you, in your head, had basically disassociated the human from the thing that it was, or the face that was being presented, then there's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, two things come into mind immediately. If I'm interacting with someone face to face, and we say this again in the language, face to face interactions, you're being judged as well as judging. You're looking at someone and they're looking at you. And if you're behaving badly, another human being is saying, you can tell that they're having a conversation inside their head thinking, what a jerk, So you have to have a lot of, if you're going to act out directly in front of someone, directly in their space, you take the risk of them reacting in kind. So you then have a fight on your hands, that risk, yes, people do fight this way, but that risk you have to factor that in. If you're gonna be a jerk, people can be a jerk to you. But if you move it backward, if you don't have that face-to-face interaction, you feel that you can, and this happens all the time. People feel that they can be absolute antisocial jerks with no consequences. No one says, "Oh, that was you who acted so badly." I'm hidden behind my layers and layers and layers of protective simulacra. And similarly, I'm throwing all my vitriol or all my anger against something that I can't see it get sad or angry or hurt. There's those arrows and slings and arrows that I'm tossing into the virtual chat room don't appear to cause damage. If you hurt someone, you see the hurt. You see the hurt on their face. And there's one of the things we mentioned at the very beginning was that that our identification with the face also brings back to us the emotion that face is giving. So if you hurt someone, you see the hurt on their face, and it shows you that you're not only that you're having an effect, but they say, well, I wouldn't want to be hurt like that. Let me not be such a jerk.
Right. I mean, but that is the experience of having a conversation where you have the back and forth and understand that what you say impacts. And that's a question that arises is, do you really believe that what you're saying has no effect? Because if that's the case, then that's an internal identity problem. Because
Right.
everything you say is recorded somewhere.
Yes, but it also says that I can act out without being judged to be a jerk, without worrying about who or what I'm hurting, because as far as I'm concerned, I've said that this is some impersonal, non-human, dehumanized thing that I can do anything to. And there's great danger in that, because the more, we've seen in our very recent history, in our very recent couple hundred years of history, that when you dehumanize, you give license to great atrocity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But that is the question. It's like, why do you feel that just putting it out there, there will be no repercussion?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're supposed to be responsible for all your words. So why do your words, when you are in a fit of anger, have no weight?
Or why do you feel that what you're striking out against is not hurt?
And that is the idea of believing that there is no connection to the humanity aspect and the face that you're dealing with. And I believe we are at the end of
the first half hour. We're going to let the faces in the studio talk to you, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about your face.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the fourth Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There Is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Hi, this is Minette Lauren, author of Race for the Sun. Do you believe in guardian angels? Check out book 1 of my Soul Watcher series. It can be found on Amazon.com or anywhere fine books are sold. Go to www.minettelauren.com and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
There Is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There Is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. Visit ArtistFirst.com. Now back to our hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, D-Man. And yes, this is brought to you by my face. and I do have a face for radio, but Margaret does not. Margaret has a wonderful face that somehow she tolerates me. See? And tonight's topic, and the first half hour of The Soul of the Everyman tonight, has been, in essence, the face, but really, and we sort of brought this out in the first half hour, that the face is what begins the human connection. Mm-hmm. The first impression you get of almost everyone you meet is of their face. And to the extent that then that relationship continues, the face becomes perhaps less important. But initially, the very first, when you go in for your job interview, or when you're presenting yourself in front of a crowd, or whenever you're putting yourself into a strange situation, you always want to make your face the most attractive that you can. You don't want to put everybody off in the very beginning. You can put them off later when you open your mouth. But in the beginning, you want them to like you a little bit, and if you get in the door and they'll get kicked out of the party.
Well, it's interesting because the face is read, and you're talking about for an interaction or an interchange, but it's also used to be able to claim space. Like when you're moving through the city, or a situation where there's just a lot of people. And we all know that feeling like someone's looking at us. And you can't explain why but you just know. And you turn immediately where that feeling is coming from, and then you see a pair of eyes. Your initial reaction is, okay, why are you staring at me? And if you're staring at me because you are trying to see if I'm vulnerable, you're trying to figure out whether I'm a mark or not, I'm not. You just stare right back. It's like, no, I see you.
I see you, exactly.
I see you. Which immediately claims your space, and you know what's going on. And that speaks volumes. You don't have to say a word, but suddenly the whole shift is there. And your face, at that point, they read it and they go, okay.
Well, what you're doing there is projecting a portion of your identity, your energy, through the face. And that connection of I see you means that you're not being just marked and you're unaware. So I'm aware of you. Now, if you start to approach me, I will react.
Well, it's a claiming of that I see you, which means I, as a full human being, having full faculty in many different ways, see, which means I've already read the intent and understand what's going on. And it's not just the one person. Once you see one person like that, you take in the rest of the situation around you, the environment around you, to say, okay, what else is going on?
Right. You do a threat assessment, and you look for faces in that environment that may be...
Well, it's very quick, because first of all, you don't break contact with that one, the first one that triggered it, until you know he's got the message, like, And then you can do a quick... It's very quick. You take a second, if that, and you know.
Exactly. At one level, the reason we're so wired to see faces is because that's where threats come from. Whether that threat is another human being or an animal. One of the things that our eyes are extremely good at is, as we mentioned in the first half, our face recognition, so that even in a very chaotic environment, or environment where there's a lot of camouflage, bushes or grasses or trees or whatever, you pick those eyes out, boom, because then you know that something is looking at you for lunch. And that back of your head, that what you just said about this, when you're being watched, that's something that over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, we developed as a, something is looking at me as potential prey.
Right.
And I need to be aware. Whether I initially see them is not important. It's that I get this feeling that I'm being, the old feeling, I'm being watched. And you have to shh, and then find those eyes and return the I'm watching you. We have those wonderful internet memes where he goes, pointing at me, I'm watching, I'm marking you, I see you, is a way of...
You don't do that when you're in that environment. That's a funny, okay?
That's a funny.
That, you're in a large crowd or whatever, and you're just... But if you're in real danger, that's fluff.
That's fluff. But it's a a very grandiose way of saying the same thing, is that I've marked you, and you're no longer, you're not hidden anymore.
No, and it's also not dismissing the person either, because some people think, oh, well, I see you, so I'm just going to go. See, I see you, so you go. It's like, no, you have to understand. You understand you're in a process right now. That could be potential danger. So I've marked you. I'm keeping track of you.
Right. And when you disassociate that, when you have this big internet in the way there, you can be being spied upon, in essence. Somebody can be looking at you as prey, and you don't have that ability to feel it anymore because it's been disassociated. You also don't have the way to mark them anymore. And so that whole idea of preparing and marking and then being aware is broken. So that's why people can be almost blindsided with these attacks, because the attackers feel completely safe and they can't be marked until they strike. So that gives, again, this sort of dehumanization. It breaks something which has really served us well for hundreds of thousands of years, and it allows people to be predators. We've all heard of predators on the internet or predators in social media, because they can sit there and say, I'm watching them, and this gives them a thrill. I'm watching these people, and they don't know it. They can't tell they're being watched. It's a sort of a sick behavior, but it's also dangerous in that regard, because it's made them into objects that can be spied upon.
Well, it's a power trip.
It's a power trip.
If it's a power trip, then they don't care if you're human.
Exactly.
That they would like you to be human, so they can feed off of you, if it's a power trip.
They don't like you to be powerful. They want you to be helpless.
Right. Human enough to dominate.
Right. So you're a target.
Mm-hmm.
You're something which I can feed off of in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on the individual level. And then when you kind of get this to a larger extent, as we mentioned in the previous half hour, when you start dehumanizing groups, or start dehumanizing a whole swaths of people, they no longer have, there's not a human face on this group. It becomes an object. All the XYZ group are bad by definition, and they can be treated as non-humans and put into whatever terrible situation or box we want to put them in, because you no longer see the face. You don't have the connection of humanity that I wouldn't want to be in that situation. I wouldn't want to be suffering whatever privations or whatever predation is happening to this group. So it gets worse when you really dehumanize. You dehumanize in block, and it happens now people are always going on about the lack of civility in current discourse. Well, really, it comes first to the lack of being able to identify that human face. You're much more civil when people see you, and you see them. You're seen, and you're interacting at a human level. If you dehumanize, that's the A team. The A team are all horrible. We're on the B team. B team is by definition good.
Right. No, it's there's a lot of assumptions that people make, and it would be awfully good to remember that you should never assume.
Oh, yeah.
But that is exactly what they do, especially on social media. They're going to assume a lot of things because that's what they're playing on for other people to see. If I put this up and this up, and this is, yes, this is the image I want to project, they are counting on people assuming things. Isn't that interesting? We're living in a society now where you're supposed to assume stuff as opposed to discerning what it was that was in front of you.
Well, that's another face that we haven't gone into, is the face that you build to do that, to make people assume certain things about you. So now you don't just have you're not just hidden, but there's this persona, there's this simulacra that you can use to project a whole different face, if you will, to everyone else. And person to person, there's a little bit of that, maybe a lot about that, when you're talking about what we mentioned before about makeup or cosmetic surgery or the way you style your hair or whatever the heck it is. Yeah, sure. But like you said, as soon as you open your mouth, a new judgment comes in. Well, now the assume, based on the kind of distance and what what the person's persona, you can't challenge it. You don't get the same kind of, well, they're a phony. You don't know, because you don't have enough information, and you assume that the persona is the truth, and that is a reversal of what we would typically have done. You say, the first thing is you give people the benefit of the doubt. They're probably okay people. They look nice. And then you interact with them, and they're not nice. And you say, they're not nice people. They're phonies. And you move on. Well, now you don't know. You don't get that human-to-human interaction where you realize, you discern that these people are not who they say they are.
Well, they have crafted their internet face to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you really know them and interact with them on a physical level, make no assumptions at all. You're just like, almost treat it like, okay, this is like another television show that people are putting up for you to be able to enjoy. This is their own cable channel that they're putting themselves on to come and enjoy.
Well, I think that there's something there too, Mark. What's there is that I think people today have gotten more jaded about what they see. In other words, you would say to someone now that their word is their bond, and their face and the way they act speaks of their character. But now we go in and say, well, I can't really trust anything. Once you've been burned a couple of times, well, I say, well, anything you see there has got to be phony, fake, contrived, and therefore I distrust all. So the lack of human interaction, the lack of the feedback loop, you have one of two things. You can either be too trusting and get burned a few times, and then you get to be completely untrusting and misjudge those who are actually trying to use this type of interaction in a genuine way. And so in that case, one or two bad experiences ruin it for all experiences. You become mistrustful, and the assumption is that everybody there is trying to be a phony. And it's self-defense, but it's also another type of dehumanization. It says, everyone on the internet is a shell of a shell of a shell, and they're not humans anymore. And then, therefore, I can also blast them or yell at them or scream at them or be vitriolic with them, because they're all phonies anyway, right?
That broad brush again. Why do we do that?
I know.
Why do we make assumptions that way? Everybody's got to be this way. Well, this has happened a couple of times. That means everybody's this way. Why do we do that?
I think some of it's convenience, but I think it's also because when you are burned, you feel wronged, and your sense of trust is difficult to regain. You say, well, if I trusted and I found out that I was wrong, and I don't want to be wrong again, so I'd rather just not trust in the beginning. I want to start off assuming that they're already nefarious and bad.
You can just look at it without making any kind of judgment and just like, uh-huh.
Well, I think that's another way to do it, sure. But I think the default case isn't that. That has a more reasoned approach. And as you said, people like to take the broad brush because it's easy. You just, whoosh, the whole B team is bad,
Well, it's just being able to separate out your reaction and your ability to discern things, because a reaction will color whatever it is that's coming in. You can't be reasoned with usually in a reaction. So if you can just sort of, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm looking at this particular, whatever the blurb is. You're like, it's coming to a point where you have to be intimately connected with what your heart is saying. Your heart knows. You're reading it and you go, someone's tripping tonight. Or, oh, well, they're having a reaction to something, so I'm just going to let them be, send them a thumbs up on some, whatever this is.
Well, certainly, but, when it was human-to-human interaction, when you could see their face, it was easier. And I think it was more genuine. And again, that sort of dehumanization, the becoming more and more faceless, has given us. It has led to an injury done to self. Your sense of others and the connection to them, that heart sense of connection, person to person, has been damaged. And one of the reactions is to trust no one. Another one is to just give only, not treat this thing, so this could be a person, might not be, treat it as a thing always, once you're in this interactive mode. The thing that has been sacrificed is that idea that there's a human being on the other side, and that it isn't just a dehumanized block or a group, or you've revealed yourself to be one of the XYZ teams, so then therefore I assign all of these characteristics to you, and I assume that this is who you are, without and the broad brush comes out and you just go, woof, oh, you're a
yeah, and
you're a this.
Look, that's my point. It's like, why must you pass judgment? Why do you feel it's necessary to pass judgment? I mean, you're not in danger. There's no bear coming to bite your throat out.
Yeah, I don't know if that's. I don't know, but that is. I'm just saying the observation is that it's become easier and easier to very quickly put people into categories and then make huge, broad assumptions about who and what they are.
It's just that it's like people are trying to find reasons to vent hatred, to vent anger. And they would deny it, of course, because they feel, well, you're classified into this, I put you there. So therefore that means I can say all these things because that's what I feel like this classification deserves.
Right.
And you sit there and you go, well, that means that they're not human and you're a hater. It's okay for you to hate. That's what you're basically saying, is that you've given permission for you to hate. You've reasoned yourself into hatred.
Exactly. And dehumanize the thing that you're hating.
And it's like, isn't that wrong?
Now you're judging. No, you're right. It is wrong.
But I mean, in your own heart, doesn't that feel wrong to you?
I think that people do feel that it's wrong at some level.
And then the reasoning mind comes in and says, oh, no, see, this is the classification, and that's why we have to keep the hatred going.
Right.
But you've got a dissonance going because
Yes.
there's a part of you that realizes that you're not making a connection.
Mm-hmm.
You have basically cut yourself off from real human heart-to-heart interaction, conversation, sharing of energy, sharing of experience, and perhaps touching into a loving experience. And that's what you're really looking for. So putting all these blocks and borders, and you're frustrated because you can't make that connection.
Right.
So what are you going to do? I need to vent my hatred. I can vent over here because I've already decided I can hate all this.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you need to, this is an indicator of understanding that you are polluting your soul.
Exactly. You're damaging. It's a heart damage.
You are polluting your soul and filling your heart space with this murky, painful energy. And when you open your mouth, that painful, murky, nebulous statements that are coming out usually are aimed at someone, and they are hateful, and they are hurtful. But that concept of, well, no, I'm not hurting anybody.
Exactly.
And you're like, no, you need to understand you are hurting. And is that what you want? You're hurting yourself.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, once you dehumanize the group and you can hate the group, you are hurting yourself.
Well, you've basically set up this space where it's okay to hurt, which means that you have got to be in this very low, nasty, negative frequency in order to do the hurt. And every time you think of that particular classification of people, you go right back into that hurtful, negative space.
Exactly. And it comes from disconnection.
And you've given over the power to something outside of yourself.
Right. You yourself have become faceless.
Yes. And I believe we've reached the end of our hour. So, I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael, and please don't be defaced.